Welcome back everybody to another in my in-depth model build series, and this is episode 14 in my building of this, the ICM 148 scale Hampden Mark I. If you haven't seen any of these videos before, I will put a link above to episode 1. You can jump back and watch the whole series through in order. Probably a better way to get a good idea of where I am with this kit. In this particular video, I'm going to be focusing on basically prepping this for paint. I need to paint around the lower gun in order to prep the gun. So I've done some off-site work, or I shouldn't say I've done some offline work. You will see at the end of episode 13 exactly where I got to this. So we're going to continue on from the end of 13. I have some putty I put on some strategic areas I have to sand off, do a little bit of cleanup on some other parts, and then we'll actually be ready to start painting a little bit of the lower color black. So let's get right into this. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. So as I mentioned, we are picking up where we left off from episode 13. So the aircraft is assembled. I've done some basic painting with the interior green color for two reasons. One, to fill any of the small, to cover all of the frames so that the canopy has the proper color on the inside of the frames, but also to check for seams. And overall, it was really good. There was a little spot here I needed to touch up, and a little spot here, and a little spot here that needs sanding. I also did a little bit of work with white glue just to fill in some of the seams, or the gaps I should say, especially around the clear parts. I have a little bit I still need to do here. I just noticed there's a gap right there. I'll need to do that with a little bit of white glue, just the tiniest of gaps right here between this window and this panel. So I just got to put a little bit of white glue in that line before I go ahead and paint the final camouflage color, but I can do that much later in the process. So right now I need to clean up these seams back here that I put putty on in the last video. Just going to use my sanding stick. I don't need to worry too much. I didn't put a lot, and I'm not sanding down very far. So these little sanding sticks should be fine. I don't want to pull out the sandpaper and go with a coarse grit. I just want to use a finer grit to do this work. You can really see how much of a step was there just by how much putty is left as I'm sanding this. As I'm sanding down the high spots, the putty will stay in the low spots. And it was actually a pretty significant step, which, like I said, I didn't think it was that bad. And then once I started getting paint on it, you could really see how it caught the light. So that should be good. You can also see, I was mentioning in the last video, the sink mark. You can clearly see that one spot of white glue, the putty I should say, that is sitting down in the sink hole. It turns out I actually have a riveter. I apparently bought one at some point. So I'm just going to, I don't know if it's the right pitch, but I'm just going to go ahead. That was horrible. I really should have a layer of paint down to make sure this is, or a layer of tape, but I'm just making the hint of the details. I don't need it to be too accurate. Go to the bottom, I'm going to sand. Same thing at the bottom. I don't think there was as much of a problem down here. It was more of just a tiny seam. So I shouldn't have as much putty left on the airframe when I'm done sanding, but we'll see. You never know till you get into it. Yeah, nowhere near as much. There are some sink marks down here though. I can see where the putty has filled in an area that I didn't expect to see putty in. So there was definitely a little bit of a sink mark down there. I'm just gonna go ahead and clean out this panel line just so that the sanding residue doesn't stay in there. Cleaning up, rescribing has always been a weak point with me, and I'm trying to get a bit better with it. So that is a goal of mine, to get better at cleaning up seams. And the only other little bit I had was right here on this side of the cowling. I'm pretty happy with that. That solved the problem. So that is pretty much all I needed to do. Which means, believe it or not, I'm actually pretty much ready to paint the bottom. However, there are a few things I want to do back here. I was trying to fit the elevator before, and it didn't want to fit very well. And I came to the conclusion that there was quite a bit of flash on these hinge points, so I'm just cleaning them up a little bit. And then I'll have to decide whether I do install the elevator in a posed position or in a straight position. I don't know yet. I'm also going to take the time to sand the seam here on the elevator, just to clean it up a little bit. I think that's good, and I believe that went up top. So let's see how easy. Oh yeah, see, that goes on. Yeah, that goes on a lot easier. And you know what? I think I can pose it just slightly down. Not a lot, just enough that it looks like gravity's pulled it down. I did install the yoke slightly forward to account for a droop in the elevator, and I think that will look really nice when it's all installed. So I will have to get the black painted up and around inside all that area when I do the camouflage, just so when you look in, you see black instead of the, I can't think right now. I'm doing something and thinking of something else. You want it so that when you look up inside, same thing I'm doing with the flaps and the ailerons. If there is any gap that you can see in, I want that area on both, and as well down in here to be the underside black color, not the upper side. I am going to just go ahead while I'm at it, since I'm knocking off a whole bunch, get a little bit of the white glue, and I'm going to fill, I'm just using a junk paintbrush. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this seam now. And I don't have a Kleenex. There we go. There, that should solve that problem. Now I need to go clean that paintbrush before I forget, because I do that all the time. And then I come back here in 2 days and my paintbrush is completely covered in paint or white glue or whatever I was last doing. So I'll put away some of this stuff, the scriber and the riveter, and that's gonna be washed, and that's that, and that's that. I'll put that over here. I'm just gonna quickly hit up the rest of these control surfaces with the sanding stick and just clean up those edges a little bit. There's not a lot I gotta do, but it's just enough that any little ridges are gone and I don't have to worry about it later. Trailing edge seam looks perfect. I'm not even gonna touch that. Again, a lot of these seams are completely hidden down inside the pocket, but it doesn't hurt to make sure you clean them up a little bit, especially if there's a mold seam or if you have any glue oozing through, you want to clean that up. Not going crazy, just hitting it lightly. Last aileron here. Okay, I'm gonna go offline. I'm gonna, this has got to dry. I've added that glue, so it's got to dry. And then I'm gonna probably, to be perfectly honest, I'm gonna paint that lower color in this particular area here. Get this all painted, that lower color, dark gray black, as I mentioned before, in preparation for installing that machine gun. So yeah, I'm probably gonna carry it back a little bit, all this area here, and then up into this area here, probably out towards the elevators. Just a nice big area, and then I can install that machine gun, mask that off, and continue. Then I can work on the top, finish this off. I'm so close to paint, it's ridiculous. Okay, these I'm gonna put away. Where am I gonna put these? I'm gonna put these in here. And let's go offline. We'll come back in a little bit and we'll see. I'm either gonna have that bottom part painted or we're gonna have another little task I'll need to do first. So let's come back in a second. So as I predicted, we managed to get, or I managed to get the black painted. It's actually a really dark gray. Painted all in this area, which is exactly what I want to do. So now I can glue in the machine gun from the top. So I'm going to be very deliberate. Well, first I'm going to test my procedures because I should be able to slide that in and get, does that work? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to need to get lots of light. So apologies in advance if I end up blocking part of the view, but I need to see very clearly what I am doing down here because I've got to get that little tab to line up into a little hole down there. So I'm going to apply my glue. I have to be very careful that I don't touch that to any of the transparent parts, otherwise I'm going to ruin the windows. Okay, here we go, folks. It's through, and I need to line that up with, oh, I think I got it. I think I got it. Oh, no, it's moving, it's moving. Okay, that's just gonna sit. I'm not gonna move it anymore. It needs to this is so hard. Okay, I need to let that sit like that, but I don't have anything. I guess I'll just use these. I'm gonna have to reapply glue on that. It does not want to stay in place. I definitely had it in the right place. It's just because I'm gluing on a painted part to a painted part. As soon as that glue started to, okay, I gotta stop talking and focus. Okay, as I was saying, as soon as it started to move and that glue started to cook off, it hadn't solidified in place, so it went rubbery. So I'm just gonna let that sit and do its magic, and it should lock in. I can't do anything else to it. And this was my big worry about that gun, is because of how it's all put together, it's very easy for it to shift after the fact. So I'm just gonna let that sit. It's gonna cook for a while. I'm gonna come back in a while and check it, and it should be in there nice and solid. And then I can continue working and prep for the rest of this. So come back in a bit. So that has dried up quite nicely. It's still a little flat. I'm not gonna mess with it. It should be fine enough that as long as I don't hit it on anything, it shouldn't fall out. So I'm going to take the step, which is a bit of a leap in the building process, for me anyways, and glue that in place. It will need, well, maybe not, we'll see. It will, there's definitely a bit of sanding that has to take place along here. And we'll see, it's gonna be very hard not to hit that. Oh, hit that gun. I'm not looking forward to this. I feel like I'm gonna break this off. Anyways, I'm just gonna do a little bit of prep work to try to get this to fit as nicely as possible without any gaps. I really want to minimize the amount of work I'm doing on this, puttying and sanding of seams. So I think, actually that fits quite nicely now. I think that was my biggest issue. So there's still a weird gap on this side, but I think with a little bit of sanding, I'll be able to knock that lip down. And if I put enough liquid glue, it should be able to ooze out enough that I can solve it after. So I'm gonna go ahead and just glue this on. I have taken a quick look through the instructions to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything, and it doesn't look like I have. So I'm just gonna put a couple of daubs of Tamiya white along the edges. This is exactly the same how I do everything else on this kit. Use the Tamiya white as like a tack weld, get everything to sit down nice and tight, and then go along with the extra thin and flood the seam to ensure a nice tight fit. I will clamp this as well as much as I can without damaging that gun underneath, because I want this to be nice and tight. And like I said, I want this extra thin to really ooze out of this seam. I want it to form a ridge so that I can come back and sand it smooth. Completely opposite of how most people want to build, but that's how I want to do it. I'm going to put a little bit on this side as well. That also kind of smears the Tamiya white a little bit and ensures it doesn't form little nodules everywhere. It will smooth it out. But I want lots and lots and lots of extra thin along this seam. Okay, now let's see how well I can clamp this without damaging that machine gun under there. Yeah, pretty good actually. Okay, I'm going to put just a tiny little bit across the backside. I probably will need a little bit of Mr. Surfacer along that backside to fill that hole. But again, we'll know more once it dries and I get a good sanding down. But okay, that's going to have to sit for a while. Yeah, that's going to have to sit for a while. And then we'll come back, let that harden up, and then we should be able to come back and see how that has solidified. Again, I'm very worried about that machine gun. I know I'm going to break it off, and if I break it off, I have no recourse. So that's going to sit. We're going to come back in a bit. I think next I'm going to start prepping for the aluminum, so I can paint the front of those cowlings, or the engine nacelles aluminum, as well as the inside of the cowlings and the cowl flaps. So that'll be next. So let's take a bit of a break, and then we'll come back. So while we are waiting for the, lower, or the rear cover there on the rear fuselage to dry, figure it's time to start prepping all of these cowling pieces. All of these do need to be painted aluminum. The cowlings, I'll paint the insides aluminum, and then obviously the outsides will get camouflage colors. And then these cowl flaps are actually all painted aluminum. And I've also got to paint the propeller hubs. So just the standard trimming of parts. I kind of mix these all up. I'm assuming I'm going to be able to go through them after the fact and figure out which one goes where. Hopefully I will. Otherwise, I'll have a funny looking cowling when I'm done. Shouldn't be too hard. As always with these, I trim the sprues a little wide. I'm coming back, trimming them down relatively close, just leaving a little bit left so I can come back and clean up with a sanding stick to ensure I don't gouge the plastic. Because trust me, that happens, and it's an absolute pain when it does. Now I'll give everything a quick sand. A lot of this you can come back and do later as well. You don't have to do it right now. I mean, these actually don't have any assembly to do. These cowl flaps are pretty much just paint and then install as is. How do these even go? I think these mount, oh, there's I think I've got sprue points on the insides. I do. Good thing I noticed that. That would have been annoying if I didn't catch that until after I had painted. I'll have to come back with a round file and get all of those inside corners done. But yeah, I need to double check how those cowl flaps go on. I think they mount to the, yeah, they mount to the cowling, to the aircraft, and the engine fits over top of that. So should be relatively easy to, once I paint that aluminum ring, then I'll paint the camouflage, then this will glue on afterwards. Oh, that's a bit of a pain. There we go. So yeah, I mean, as always with this stuff, just take your time. No point to rush. It's a really awkward spot to put a sprue gate, though, I have to say. There's the other one there. Excuse me. I was looking at the next version of this Hampden kit that's coming out, the Torpedo TB Mark 1. And it actually has the longer porcupine exhaust that I was hoping I'd have on this kit. So it's a little frustrating. It's too bad I couldn't just order that one part, because I don't want the torpedo bomber. I want the bomber version, but I also want to have the porcupine exhaust, the longer exhaust with the flame dampening attachments on it, which was called the porcupine exhaust. But anyways, yeah, it would have worked a lot better with what I plan to do with this kit, to have those exhausts, but you can't win everything. I'm sure there'll be a later version of this as the Mark II, which will have those exhausts, as well as things like the double machine guns on the upper and lower turrets and all that other fun stuff that isn't included in this kit. But I also plan to do mine as an earlier an earlier one, so it's kind of in between. It's got the single machine gun, but also had the later exhaust. So it's kind of a bit of both worlds, but I'll make it work. The 408 Squadron, which is what I'm building this up as, also pretty quickly moved on to, it was the last bomber squadron to operate the Hampden, but they also very quickly converted to just doing mine laying operations. Once it was realized that the aircraft was not as capable and really was not, it was combat ineffective as a bomber. It was not worth flying over and doing actual bombing missions with it. So 408 converted to mine laying operations, and just did that for the last little while before it converted to the Lancaster Mark II. So, although as I said, I am doing this as an early version, so I will actually still do it with the bombs. I'm not going to do mines. I do have resin mines somewhere if I dug around. I'm pretty sure I still have a Belcher Bits kit that has a parachute mine in it. But, as I said, I'm going to put bombs in mine. Okay, so that's pretty much all ready to go. And how do the cowlings go together? They all fit on after the fact. After they do that. So this is the lower one. So that's the lower one that goes. So if this was the right wing, that's the lower one. And it feeds up around the outside. Like that. Then I suspect this one goes there. And then I suspect the one that doesn't have any clips goes there and goes around the exhaust. Anyways, I'm gonna, yeah, that's gonna get painted soon enough. You know what I'm also gonna do now while I have it? I'm going to pull the masking off for the propeller tips. And that's because I do need to assemble. There's the central, well, I'll have to do some research. I got to look at some pictures and see, oh my God, that looks so good. Look at that. Look at that. Ha! I really gotta start doing this more often. Painting the yellow tips first. That looks perfect. I'm so used to having, excuse me, garbage looking propeller tips. That looks amazing. I'm actually gonna do a quick check right now on the interwebs. I'll actually just show you the picture here in a second. I wanna see 408 Squadron Hampden. Did the 408 Squadron Hamptons have the spinners or the... Looks like they had the spinners. Okay, so I don't have to add the little counterweights. I will just glue the spinner on, but I'll do that after. I'm going to, I'm still gonna paint everything in the middle there aluminum, and then I'll mount the spinner after the fact. I'll paint that black later, and I'll glue that on after I've painted all of that aluminum. But I do want this to be all painted aluminum. So that's gonna be the next little thing, which we'll do. I'm gonna mask off, use this one. I'm gonna mask off these propeller blades and prep everything for the aluminum so I can paint the central hub. Oh, come on. You know what? I might have picked the tape that's too thick. I'm gonna switch to the thinner tape. That's probably way too long, but it is what it is. I'm gonna keep this tape nice and tight with the propeller hub. There we go. So yeah, I'll do this one and then I'll do the rest offline, since it's all going to be the exact same process. But yeah, just like that. And then I can do some more. I'll deal with the masking around the the rest of the prop when I go to paint it. I'll just do some thick tape around the outer edge of the prop, make sure the rest of the blades are properly masked. And there. And then that gets painted aluminum in the hub, and I'll paint all of that aluminum at the same time. And yeah, you know what? I think I might just do that. Let's just hop off. I'll prep this propeller. I'll get all of this painted aluminum, and then we will come back. Oh, you know what I also need to do? I need to prep the wheels. I think they are also aluminum. Let's see. E. Yep. Okay. I'm not quite ready to paint this yet. I have to glue these wheels together. I do have the masks, so I can mask these off. And I do need to paint them again. I know that. I had no illusions when I painted these black already. What I'm gonna do is, I think I might have mentioned it, is mask off and paint the aluminum. Then I'm gonna mask this after I've cleaned up the joint seam down the middle, the ridge, and I'm gonna paint a little tiny bit of rubber, like tire rubber, just around the outside, so that the section that's touching the ground is a slightly different shade than the sidewalls, and kind of looks like it's got a little bit of wear to it, but not crazy. And that's how I'm gonna do that. And I think it's gonna, it will hide the seam quite nicely, but also give the tire just a little bit of color variance, which, like I said, I think will end up looking pretty good. So let's glue these together. One side has a ridge One side has a pocket. And of course, that goes together unbelievably beautiful. It'll just need the tiniest amount of sanding, I think, at the end. I'll put the glue down inside the pocket. Limit how much oozes out. And put it together. And then I always, when I do the wheel halves like this, if they don't have pins, I tend to put it together and then just spin it a little bit, and it just spreads that glue. I'm also going to try, oh, that's tight. Oh, that's already bonded. Okay, I wanted to get that part as close together as possible. I'll do it better on the other one. So that the sprue gates are on the same side of the wheel. So if I sand them down and create a flat spot, the flat spot's at the exact same side, and I can make that the part of the wheel that touches the ground. So I'm going to just do it like that, and I'm going to spin it so that those line up. There we go. And then I'm going to hit it with just the tiniest amount of Tamiya Extra Thin. It doesn't need much. Same on this one. And then I'll let this sit for a bit. I'll come back. I can prep these wheels. See, I'll sand the edges down. Then I'll come back online, mask these wheels, and prep everything to paint aluminum. Oh, that's good. And we'll see how easy these all go together. Oh, that's actually not that bad. I'll probably end up putting a little bit of a gloss coat on that. Yeah. I'll put a bit of a gloss coat on the wheel when I'm done to protect it. Actually, that's not that bad at all. It doesn't scratch. Okay, let that sit. I'll come back in a little bit and we'll mask the wheels. I'll have that finished and we'll prep for painting aluminum. So be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, I've got those wheels done. Everything looks good. There's still a slight seam between them, but not enough for me to really worry that much. What I do need to do is figure out, there we go, where I put the masks for this. Too many models on the go. Okay, wheel masks. So we're like, as I mentioned, oh, it's the same pair of tweezers. Come on. There we go. As I mentioned, we're going to be masking these wheels so I can paint the hubs aluminum along with all of the cowlings, cowl flaps, and the front of the engine nacelles. So the Edward set does include wheel masks. So it's just a matter of getting these put on. Just like that. The rest of the wheel I will mask off with regular masking tape same with propellers, when I go to paint the hubs. Ooh, that's not good. There we go. Why does that side not want to line up? There. Just needed some gentle persuasion. I can always go around afterwards and touch them up by hand if there's a little bit of a mismatch. It seems like the inner ring is just slightly too small. Although it could be user error and I just started it off in the wrong place. So who knows? Last one is there. Now I still need to build a canopy for this. I haven't done that yet, and I need to get that done before I move on to painting the camouflage, because I will need to paint the canopy at the same time. So I will have to, excuse me, I will have to start thinking about that sooner rather than later. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to need to come around and touch this up by hand at some point. I think the wheel masks are just a slight touch too narrow. Yeah, I'll probably have to come back and touch that up by hand, but we'll see when it's all done. But it just feels like it doesn't line up on one side as well as it should. So anyways, that is the wheel hubs. So that is done. That's masked. I just got to over tape. And then all of these, which I might as well get ready to go now. All the insides of this will be painted aluminum at the same time. I don't know how much of this cowling is visible, but you're better off to paint it and not see it than, you know, not paint it and realize after assembly that you can clearly see into it and it looks like garbage. So I'm sure I've said that before, but take the time now to do it right. And if you've overworked, you've overworked, but at least you've not underworked. So that'll get, and then this. And then we're gonna get the generic painter's tape and we're gonna start over taping the propeller blades. This stuff is like $2 a roll, so I'm not too worried about wasting it. So that's the propellers also ready to go. I'll do that a little later. I don't want to put too much on that clipboard and have, or the base here, and have too much going on. I'll paint that stuff first, and then I'll come back and paint that. And then these I'll probably end up masking with little bits of this Tamiya tape. We'll see how many pieces I need, oops, to get all the way around. It's probably going to be quite a few because of the, well, maybe not, 1, 2, maybe 5. 5 per side. Yeah, that's not horrible. I'll do the other side as well. And once I have all 5 of these down, or both sides done, I'll fold over the edges and try to minimize the amount of tire that is left exposed, because with my track record, if there is a little bit of exposed tire, I will find a way to paint it aluminum. So I'm just going to fold all this over on itself. Okay, so that's one done. I'll do the other one. Okay, so that's all of that done. So I need 4 more clips. One I can grab onto the prop blade. And then this, I can grab the tire. I'm not too worried about scratching paint because I do have it masked. And just like that, I am pretty much ready. Actually, you know what I'm gonna, oh, that's a quick way to break landing gear. I think I'm going to rearrange these slightly and see if I can fit everything on here in one shot. I think I can. Prop. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. I got to go over. I don't think I'll have time tonight. We're getting pretty late in the day. I'll come back in the morning tomorrow, get all of those painted aluminum, and yeah, I got to prep some other stuff as well. I got to paint some of the B24 stuff aluminum. No, you know what? I'm going to wait because I have to paint the props aluminum. So I'll do that in a separate round. So yeah, we'll come back in the morning. I'll get these things painted. And then for you guys, it'll be a split second. We'll come back. You'll see all of this painted up and we'll start cleaning it all up and getting ready for the next steps. So this has been sitting for a while. It should be, make sure I don't knock that gun. That should be more than solid. That's been probably close to 24 hours that's been sitting. I'm not going to worry too much about this panel line right now. I'm not painting the top for a little while still. I am just going to hit the seam with the slightest knock of the sandpaper just to see how it all ends up looking. Yeah, you know what? I might not have to do anything to that. I think just the clamp, although this side does have a little bit of a step, but Yeah, there's the slightest of steps on this side. It's probably just gonna be the tiniest amount. I might actually have to do a bit of putty on that side. Yeah, I'm gonna wait until I get a bit of paint on the top. I'll do effectively the same thing I did last time, which is mask this area off, hit this with a color. I don't know what color that's gonna be yet, but just hit it with a quick coat of something just to check what the seam looks like with a bit of paint on it. I do believe I'm going to need to do the tiniest amount of putty up here. And I think it has more to do with the way I prepped the part, sanded the part down more than anything else. There's just the slightest step. And it's not even a step, it's like an indent. Instead of it being flat across, it comes in, dips a little bit, and then continues. And I think it's because I rounded the corner off on the piece when I was sanding down the sprue gate, which is always a risk you take, but actually, you know what? I think I might have just sanded the worst of it out. I might just leave that. That actually doesn't look that bad. There's the tiniest of gaps there, but I'm pretty sure there was a panel line along there anyways on the actual aircraft. Again, I'm gonna wait until I get a little bit of paint on that, see how bad it really looks, but I think that is good. That machine gun hasn't fallen out yet. It's in there pretty solidly, so that is a huge bonus. I think we're moving along. The one thing I did forget to do, I was working on painting some of the aluminum bits, and I forgot I had to paint the front of that. And in order to do that, I also needed to install this little piece. But it also seems to go onto the cowl flap. So I might have to brush paint that later. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and paint the fronts of these aluminum, and I'll figure out that little intake later. I honestly think what you're gonna see, you're not even gonna see that intake, I don't think. So I'm just gonna end up assembling it later, painting it aluminum by hand and just gluing it on. I think that's the best way to do it at this point, because if I install it now and the cowl flaps don't fit on properly after I've installed that piece, then I'm kind of screwed, and I don't want to make that mistake. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to paint the fronts of these aluminum, let them dry for a bit, and then I can mask that off. There's the panel line around here I can follow to make sure that I get a nice straight line, and then as everything starts to fit in, it should look good. So I'm gonna go paint those. I wonder actually if I can use, I might even use that aluminum paint back here to check that fit. I'll mask this off and I'll just spray some aluminum down in here and see how all of that ends up looking. Yeah, I think I'll do that. So let's go get that painted. We'll come back and we'll see what it looks like. So that has now had the aluminum painted that I wanted. I went ahead and added it to a few other spots along the wingtips, just because I wanted to make sure that they were glued together nicely. And there is the slightest of seams, so I'll just clean that up a little bit. I also want to add those wingtip lights before I paint, and so the insides of those needed to be painted aluminum so that you would see that behind the clear lenses. I still have to figure out whether I'm painting, how I'm painting the bulbs. There seems to be the smallest of bulbs on the inside. I gotta figure that out still, but that was a way for me to check some of the seams. There'll be a bit of cleanup on those wingtips. I also painted down inside the landing light. Get these lights reset. There we go. Down inside the landing light, because I'll have to glue that on and mask before I paint. As I said, these were done. I also went ahead and hit it up around the piece I glued in. Some seams visible. I'm not going to worry too much. I think I'm just going to leave it as is. It doesn't look horrible. And I think once the camouflage is on and everything's weathered, that shouldn't look too bad. I also hit up the spots where I did the puttying at the back here, and that looks really good. So I'm pretty happy with all of that. I do want to let that sit for 24 hours or so. I'm actually heading out of town for work this afternoon, so I will be gone. So this is actually going to sit probably for about a week before I come back and do any real more work on this as it looks. So that's going to sit off to the side. I also have all of the other stuff I needed to paint painted. So all of the cowling pieces, the cowling thirds, I guess if you want to call them, all of them have the insides painted aluminum and are ready for install, which again, this won't happen until well after I've painted the camouflage. I do need to mask off the insides to paint the camo on the outsides, but again, that will be done a lot later. It's going to be fun to do. I'm going to have to paint the cowling up. I gotta figure out how to do this. I think I'll need to look at some camo patterns as well. I need to figure out which scheme, whether it's the A scheme or the B scheme that I am following. There are two different schemes. You can see here, there's two different schemes. So there's a scheme, I don't know if it's A or B. One scheme has this Y-shaped green on the left wing and then like a brown curve on the right. On this side, the brown curve's on the left and the green Y is on the right. So it's basically a mirror image of each other. So that's an A and a B. And based off of the camouflage patterns on the sides, I can compare that to pictures of the aircraft I want to build online, and I can verify which scheme I have, and that's going to dictate my cowlings. On one side, the cowling is on all green. On the other side, it's a green and brown pattern. But it's also, oh, you know what I just realized? It looks like the camo might line up perfectly. Maybe not. No, on one side it doesn't. Anyways, I'm gonna have to, what I'll probably do is paint the camouflage on the aircraft itself, and then paint the cowling at the same time, and then come back afterwards, install the cowl flap, and then match the camo demarcation line across the cowling ring. So I'm gonna have to do multiple passes and whatnot to get that camo pattern to match on these cowlings, because I can't install the cowlings until I have the engine and this cowl ring mounted, but by the time I do that, it's too late in the process to paint the camo. So that will all get done later. These rings have also been painted. You know what I can do now, though, now that that is all dry, you can actually fit everything together temporarily and see, because that fits on like that, and then the engine fits on like that. There we go. And then that exhaust ring fits on see, doesn't want to fit. Let's get this glued together first, or assembled first. Where? So yeah, that goes like that. I can press that together enough that it stays. That lines up like that. And then the engine fits on like that. And you can see how all of that lines up nicely. And then I'll paint some exhaust staining down the side. And then all of these cowlings all fit into place. Theoretically, it looks like I could probably, you can't see what I'm doing over here because I'm off camera. So that's the engine kind of temporarily fitted with the cowl flaps. It's hard to see because there's no camo and everything. I get, you know, theoretically I could leave it with these cowlings off, but it's missing all of the wiring and everything behind, all the hoses and stuff. So I'm not going to leave it off. I'm probably going to install the cowling, but you could leave one of these sides off without any real problem. So yeah, the cool thing is I'll be able to take pictures of it all. I might just leave one cowling like loose, like whichever one here is at the top. You can just leave it loose. Oh, and you can be able to pull it off after. We'll see. I think I might end up doing that near the end, but it's gonna be fun. It looks really, really good when it's all together. The detail in this, I've said it a few times, the detail in this kit is amazing. And if I can get those cowlings to just sit, the top one at least, to just sit in place and not glue it in, that's what I'm gonna do. So the next thing we have are the wheels and the props. They need to be demasked. So I can go ahead and pull the tape off all of these, and you'll be able to see what they look like. Luckily, demasking is a lot faster than masking. It's also messier, but you know what? It is off a little, but at that size, you don't notice it, and I think it will be fine once some weathering is added. Once the black wash is added to that and it's all properly flat coated and weathered, I will flat coat the wheels. I want that aluminum. I don't want it shiny at all. I want it dull. I want it to look like it's been weathered and used and abused and slightly oxidated, which is what would happen with these things. One that's in use. You can imagine that wheel's probably been flown many, many hours through combat and dirt and everything else, so it will not be pristine. And then the propellers, I gotta be very careful that I don't snap a blade off doing this. This painter's tape has a lot of stickiness to it, stiction, and it's very easy to bend apart or break apart. So be very careful if you're using it. You don't want any twisting or torsion on anything because it will snap the plastic, so just try to peel it. And it's sticky to itself, and that's the problem. The tape sticks to itself really, really strong. So if you're trying to pull two pieces of tape apart like that and you twist it the wrong way, you are going to do some damage. But yeah, this is coming off nice. You can really see masking job did its job. And there is absolutely no overspray at all on those propellers. And again, with a little bit of black wash and some weathering. Now again, you're not gonna see a whole lot of this propeller because there's a spinner on the front. It's also why I didn't add the counterweights. In theory, I could have added the counterweights and then glued the spinner on afterwards. I think you're just asking for those counterweights, especially with what I'm doing right now. Those counterweights are gonna get broken off, damaged. It's probably easier just to not have them installed, considering that you're really, like, again, unless somebody is specifically looking for those counterweights to be installed underneath the spinner and they really get in with like a magnifying glass, no one's ever going to notice that they're not installed. And I'm saving myself a ton of problems and effort by not installing them. But yeah, that is that. So, as I said, these are all going to sit for a while. I want all of these to harden up and dry properly. All the paint to really set. And then, as I said, I'm also heading out of town. So you guys aren't going to see much of a break. I have enough content that videos are going to be releasing on the days I'm out of town. And when I do come back, I'll be able to work on this enough to finish this video off, and this video will just come right out into the normal sequence of things, and you shouldn't really notice any breaks on for anybody who's actually watching this. So that's not a problem. But the next steps when I come back, I'm going to have to mask off the fronts of these, and then I'm going to have to start figuring out things like landing lights, nav lights, all the little things I need to do prior to paint, because I am like very, very close to laying some camouflage down on this thing. So yeah. Yeah, let's give that some time to sit, and we'll come back in a little bit and continue on.